Hello, welcome to another edition of Keene No Spin. I'm Randy Filiault, and you are?
I'm Chris Coates.
He knew that because he had it written down. Been a few weeks since we've been back because of conflicting schedules, but we're back. And it's been kind of an eventful couple of weeks, and we'll go over a couple of things. First of all, I've got to once again say congratulations to my cohort here. Either congratulations or I'm sorry, you get elected again to something. You just can't stay away.
Yeah,
back to school board.
Back to the school board. I enjoy it. There was an opportunity for 1 year, and see if I can balance it out with other things that I'm doing, and it's probably the most rewarding work I can do. I've been on the city council, I've been in the state house, but being on the school board, it's just you really can see. We work with great people. You can see the difference you're making. You have contact with young people, which I think is important in this day and age.
Keene's future, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and so it's all good.
Good. I saw you and I just figuring the math before we came on the air. It looks like somewhere between 8 and 9% voted. The unfortunate part is that means approximately 91, 92, 93% people didn't vote. Mm-hmm. And somehow we've got to make that change, and I don't have the answer to it. You know, I mean, if everybody that complained on social media and Facebook voted, it'd be like 100%. Mm-hmm. You know, because really, I mean, you look on social media and everybody complains. But when it comes to voting time, nobody goes out and votes. So, look, if you're complaining on Facebook or social media, I was in and out of the voting booth probably 5 minutes, maybe 4, maybe 3. I mean, it took longer to park the car and get out of the car. Right. It's that quick. And but once again,
it's a $66 million budget.
I know. Yeah, 66 million. Yeah, not worth voting for. It's like people that they won't buy a lottery ticket if it's at 500 million, but if it hits $1 billion, oh yeah, I'm going to vote because who wants that $500 million lottery ticket?
Well, and people say your vote doesn't count. Well, they had an incumbent when Peter Starkey, great board member, who ended up on the short end of the vote. And Rebecca Lancaster came in as a newbie, but she did her homework too. I mean, she sent out mailers. I was at my home. She knocked on my door and gave me a piece of paper describing who she is. People don't forget that, but at the same time, she still needed to have people cast a vote for her.
Still get a vote,
and that's why it made a difference in an election,
especially in a low turnout. Just that extra effort that she made. And I remember that going back. It was a long time ago when I first ran for city council. Same thing, just went out and hit every door. Because you're the newbie, you've got to hit every door. Yeah. And it makes a difference. I mean, I had many people say they'd never had a candidate come to the door ever about anything. Right. And I saw a couple of comments on Facebook with her saying, you know what, I don't know if I agree with her 100% on everything because you don't know yet. But she made the effort. So kudos to her. Mm-hmm. I mean, you make the effort, you deserve to get in. So kudos to you. So you got a 1 year term to try it out again, kind of like riding the bike again, and see what you think.
If I can be helpful, that's great. And I think sometimes it's nice if at least when I was on the board, when a short-term seat opened up, to fill somebody else that had to step down for whatever reason. It was always nice to have somebody that could come in, understood some of the topics that you maybe needed to get up to speed on them, but understood them. Right. And it allowed the board to continue on and do what it needed to do.
Well, being the newbie and the veteran, so you can take you can raise both those flags. And I know you do your homework. What do you see as the biggest upcoming issue for schools and school board and budget? Anything that you see that raises a red flag that you're interested in? Or just overall?
I think there's always the funding issue, and ensuring that the formulas and the amount that the state is giving to us for each student maintains at a certain level that's fair. It's not. They say it's adequate funding. It's clearly not adequate funding currently. Right. And then they do other things so that you get less money, which puts a burden back on the taxpayer. I think it's also to continue to watch the bottom line and see how to move forward in a way that's thoughtful and maintains the level of education. And if that, and takes care of those, the gift of the Keene School District clearly is their teachers. The administrators too, but the teachers really, day in and day out, they're in the classroom and they're really working with the students to make a difference. And so, let's make sure that we honor them by, I think the contract was fair. Actually, to be honest with you, I thought that it was better for the board than it was the teachers. But that's just how I read it, and somebody could argue the other way, but it's neither here or there. It passed, and so over the next 4 years, you're going to have a contract, which is healthy for the city of Keene too. Everything is tied together. If Keene, the city of Keene wants to promote itself as a city that is attractive to people, you need to have a strong school system.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And it helps employers. It helps everybody across the board.
When we talk about, and I've talked about it recently, being pro-business and what's going to bring businesses into Keene, it's not just the business, like you said, it's the schools. Because a lot of these people that are looking to move into communities to maybe take a job somewhere, one of the first things to look at, especially if they have kids, man, they're looking at the school system.
Yeah.
And if you've got a weak school system, forget it. They're just not going to come into town. So I think passing the budget is going to have a positive impact on anybody looking to come into Keene.
But I also come in with that we do need to look at things differently. You've got the issues that are down in SAU 93. You've got enrollment numbers down there. When you and I were at Keene High School, it was 1,900, 1,800 students, maybe even more in some years, and now we're at 1,350. So we have room to make some decisions. I've been talking about this forever, and I'm going to continue to talk about it, but we should be looking how we can work together on some levels. And if that means consolidation at some point, in this day and age, that makes all the sense in the world. So there may be ways that we can get there. They're outside of the box thinking, but it's worth it.
I know, any of us who have listened to the radio the last couple of weeks will have heard, Mark Funk, who's a selectman for the town of Roxbury.
Yeah.
And, just arguing about the funding formula from an ADNOC. And in front of me right now, do you know how that went? How the vote down there went?
Yeah, they actually changed the, what is it,
formula?
75-25?
Right.
And so based on evaluations and students in the seats.
Okay, good.
And so it's now 50-50.
I've always wondered why Roxbury didn't go to Keene, being just over
the other
bridge.
day on the radio, somebody was arguing me that Roxbury wasn't, and I kept saying, no, it's in that SAU 93.
No, they've been in Monadnock forever.
Yeah.
And, just for being over the Branch River, I've always wondered why Roxbury doesn't go to Keene, but it always comes down to dollars, and, I'm not sure if it's,
Roxbury could come to Keene if they chose to.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Winchester did, and Sullivan has, and so.
Yeah. Well, every year it changes. So, but like you said, Keene's enrollment is down, not as many kids. We could probably afford to bring a couple more towns in. So.
But here's the thing. Troy lost the year before, but they went out. They worked with Swansea. They brought forward last year the petition to change the formula. This year they worked with Swansea to have them change the formula because I think it made good political sense that Swansea, a different town, instead of Troy, who has been crying about this, and I say crying, I don't mean it sarcastically, I'm just saying they've been the one that have been speaking to it for years, and so I think they did the politically right thing. They got another town, and it's the biggest town in their district,
right.
Second biggest population in the county, in Swansea, to bring it forward and put it on the warrant article. So good for them. They got passed, and hopefully that helps those towns. I know that Fitzwilliam and Roxbury probably don't want to see that that to change because it may shift their numbers. But I think for Troy it takes $4 off the school portion. $4 off the school portion. I think I was told on Saturday. I think it adds $1.80 to Fitzwilliam, if I remember exactly what the individual told me. I don't know if that's factually correct, but the person that called in seemed to have a clear understanding of it. It's one of those moments where I knew of it, but I didn't know enough about it, so I actually asked the audience, and we
Got the
don't
answer?
you don't pretend to know it, then ask the audience, because there's probably somebody out there that does.
Yep. No, I know you have a listenership on your Saturday radio show that
Yeah,
you'll either get those that agree and those that disagree will call up quick also.
yeah,
And that's the whole goal of having a radio show.
yeah.
And you still, like myself, we've both been told we have a face for radio. So this is like just defying all logic doing a TV show.
No, I've been told
You've been told what?
that I have a face for radio.
Yeah.
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 No, I have. I don't know what you.
I don't want to say what I've been told.
Well, didn't we have this conversation the other day?
We did.
Okay.
Well, speaking of that, speaking of things that we talked about on the radio the other day, you know what? One thing I want to talk about before I get to other things is I'm going to
What could that be? Food
I
truck?
want to complain about something. When I came here this afternoon to sit up in the library and check over, like we just said, some of the things that were just voted on and last minute things out of the newspapers, I was unable to sit in the front room and do research because too many people were passed out at the tables.
Sleeping.
Sleeping, passed out, whatever. Let's put it this way. Their faces were planted on the tables. Arms out to the side, faces planted on the tables. Something that I'm going to discuss with the city manager. You know, I get it. You have to have a place to stay warm if it's cold outside. Of course, it was almost 50 degrees today. But with that said, you know, somebody like myself or anybody for that matter wants to come in, sit in that front room, do a little research. The tables are taken up by people passed out. Backpacks on the floor in the corner, face down on the table. That has to change. Yeah, I have sympathy, but not that much. So, you know, it's an issue that we need to take care of. I mean,
Well,
you know, here we are spending, or the library, especially Friends of the Library, spending millions on the new
You're
renovation.
spending millions too.
Millions.
The city's spending
Well,
millions
the
too.
city's spending some, you know, some bucks. Let's put it this way: there's a lot of money being spent, and you know, you tell people, look, we've just spent, you know, millions on library renovation. Yeah, you can't go in the front room now because people are passed out.
Well, I think it's I think it's great that you would bring it forward, because I think it's a deeper conversation. I don't think it's the library has a problem with people sleeping. It's what are the in the wintertime when you need to be out of 100-night shelters or some other place and you don't have any place to go. What warming room do we have in the city that meets the needs? So I think you bringing that point up is good, because I also think at the same time, does it deter people from coming to the library, especially with younger kids? I don't know. I'm just saying that, but I mean, you came in and said you wanted to sit down and read the paper.
And I was by
real quickly.
myself without young kids.
Well,
with me.
but you couldn't find a spot
No,
because people are actually physically laid
Yep.
laid out. So
tables were full.
yeah,
Tables were full.
and so I think it's twofold. How is the library addressing it? But more importantly, what is the answer? You know, the answer isn't having. It may be for the library to have a stiffer policy around people that are coming in, but what's the answer from the city's standpoint of then what? Where do people go? Because, you know, a lot of these people, they come in here, they start reading. You know, at least for me, when I start reading, it just makes my eyes heavier and heavier to the point where I go to sleep. And so I can understand it, and they have no other place to go. So I think it's one of those what you're doing is putting a problem forward, like the food truck, and
We'll get to that next.
it's clearly an onion that's going to have to be peeled back, because there's some core values that city needs to look at on how do we want to move forward with addressing situations where people need to be warm and stay warm because there is no other place. Where do they go? Do they go? You know, do you have a warming room up at the rec center? You know, where people can go and just relax. But then that's going to turn into people just sleeping.
Well, and it goes
you know,
back to the question, and I've been asking this last year, but as soon as you start mentioning the homeless issue, you're immediately, you know, labeled as against the homeless, and the conversation stops. I tried to have this conversation last year. And the conversation was, where are these people coming from? Now, you know how New Hampshire law is, once they show up on your doorstep, you own them. The problem with Keene is that, you know, we are so generous and so compassionate that other communities around us, all the way to Concord, down through Massachusetts, that maybe aren't quite as compassionate, basically just put them on a bus and send them to Keene. And, I know that sounds stereotypical, but it's true. And it's
And
it's
just
hard enough
because
for us to take care of those that were brought up in the area. And by the area, I mean, Swansea and the towns around us. I mean, hey, we're compassionate. But, but when you find out people are being bussed down from Claremont, from Concord, coming over from Bellas Falls because they know they can come here and have a place to stay, is that fair to Keene taxpayers, to be doing all the funding?
But here's the devil's advocate. Whether I agree or disagree with what you're saying, that's part of my role on the show too, is to be devil's advocate, not just to go.
And you do a good job with that.
Is the how do we know that this is happening? What is it? Is it that that the police are saying this? Is it because I'm not hearing that from people that are dealing with these situations? They're saying they're Keene residents. Now, I don't know what the ruling from the state is. I'd have to look at it closer to see if somebody comes into the city and stays, does that stays in one of our shelters? Do they become with a child that for whatever reasons gone from one school district to another, but has certain needs that have to be taken care of because it may be that their funding comes from the last district they left to the so the new district has got the student, but the other district's bearing the cost. They're also getting the monies for the student, but
residence-wise, once you show up, and that's the way New Hampshire is. Once they show up on your doorstep and they say, "I am a Keene resident," they are a Keene resident. I mean, and literally, they can go down to the DMV and get a non-driver's license, and if they wind up in a shelter in Keene, wherever that shelter is, and they claim that as the address, then they are now a Keene resident. But it becomes a little bit more complicated now because once you've become a Keene resident, not only do you have shelter, but now you have access, to other things that Keene is required to fund.
Well, with what you're saying though, doesn't it speak to having a bigger conversation, some homeless summit of some level, to really start hitting all these issues? Because if Keene's carrying the burden, and they're being seen by some coming up short, wouldn't it be best if at some point, somebody said, let's have the city manager work on bringing people together to have some level of a summit to start peeling back, as I said before, this onion and addressing, because you've hit about 6 different things that should be addressed. It's not,
yes.
I don't hear you saying a negative about the homeless. It's that we need to address these issues within this, and if we don't, then there's a problem, because then there's issues like people can't utilize facilities because they're taking up the space. But if we had started to address it, maybe they wouldn't be, and the library could be the library on some levels again.
Yep, and I plan on doing this, so we just had this conversation now.
We just did this whole thing. I worked it all out for you.
In seconds. Why you on school board, man? You just need...
You just now bring this...
higher level.
Put a letter together.
Actually, me and my letters, and I will put a letter together. And I've talked to the city
But
manager.
it has to be a global look. It can't just be one issue. It's got to be a global look.
Okay. Well, if it's global, I'll send it to the United Nations. But
no,
I'm going to deal with Keene at this point.
I'm talking an overall arching view of all the issues that need to be addressed, and not just this little. This is an issue. Change the policy. Kick them out. Well, where do they go then?
Oh no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, you can just say
in the summer
you're leaving the library, but the problem is, say the 10 people that are up there right now that are sleeping or passed out or whatever. If you boot them from here, where are they going?
Right.
That's the question. It's not resolving the problem. It's just moving them to somebody else.
Right. And in the summer, you're going to have the same situation when it's really hot. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And the city manager, who, by the way, I think she's doing a great job. You're really getting her feet wet fast. I've talked to her on this, and she used to be the city manager up in Franklin, New Hampshire, a little smaller community than Keene.
Yeah.
And she knows about it because when she was in Franklin, she basically just said in Franklin they'd put him on a bus and send him over to Concord or Plymouth.
She said that.
Yeah. Oh. So it wasn't illegal. It was basically it was, hey, we're here in Franklin. We don't have the accommodations for you. We'll send you somewhere that does. Well, guess what other communities do to Keene? Well, gee, we don't have the accommodations. We'll
Well,
send you down to Keene. They
If
can take care
if
of
I
you.
was the town that was receiving, I'd be upset with Franklin saying, step up.
Oh, yeah.
Step up. If you've got an issue, you need to address it. And I would say that to any town that's sending is that why if that is occurring, like you said, and that should be discussed, then we need those towns need to be. I mean, it just doesn't seem right, you know. And yeah,
It is not right.
because I see that on
right,
some
but it's
levels.
reality.
I see that on some levels where there may be communities that don't have certain things in their community, but they rely on others for that service. It just doesn't feel right sometimes to me.
Well, going back to that, just locally, last year I was talking to a selectman in Westmoreland about the homeless issue. And he fully admitted, yeah, we tell him to go to Keene. And I was like, well, why don't you set up a homeless shelter in your town? And his argument was, well, we can't afford it. It's like, wait a second, your tax rate's lower than ours. Why can't you afford it? And then it was just put on the blinders and, well, Keene's the hub, so you guys have to deal with it.
Right.
So that's always the argument. Keene's the hub, you guys deal with it. But it's not fair to our taxpayers to have to fund the bill for everybody. So, yes, I will be addressing this with the city manager.
Well,
'cause
get
is a
on it.
much
What are you
bigger-
doing?
It is I'm out of here. Speaking about letters,
Yeah.
I wrote a letter, as you and I have discussed, about food trucks.
Yep.
So this is more than food trucks. It just has to do with being pro-business in Keene. And what I thought was going to be, and that's what I get for thinking, what I thought was going to be a very simple letter just saying, look, as far as food trucks go, there's no sense restricting them with hours. Let them go out there, and whatever hours they can make a couple of bucks, let them make it. And then the noise ordinance issue came up, and where are we going to let them go? And we want more restrictions over that. And some members of city council said we want the authority, and so away we went on what I thought was going to be a simple issue. So as you're aware, my motion failed 7-6 last week to allow food trucks to be out whenever they wanted to be out, which will be now it's 11 o'clock on weekends. But the argument from a couple of food truckies and a potential food truckie that wants to open up in Keene was that there's a market in Keene between 11 and 1 in the morning, 11 and 2 when the nightclubs and bars let out. They said we have a chance to make some money there. In the way the ordinance is written now, they can't do that. So that was my argument. It failed 7-6. However, as you're familiar, Chris, that 2 weeks after a vote comes through, any city councilor that voted on the prevailing side, meaning one of those 7 councilors, can vote for reconsideration, in other words, to change their vote. And I'm aware that's going to happen. So within the next couple of weeks here, the issue will be brought back up again, and we'll see where it goes. And I think if you're going to be pro-business, it's more than just rhetoric. You got to put your money where your mouth is and stop saying we're just pro-business. And this is so small. If we can't get out of our way with something this small, how are we ever really going to be or have the perception of being pro-business? When we say, and the whole argument was, well, if you want extended hours, you come back to see us. And my argument was like, why? Why make them come back and see us? Unless a business is out there.
Is the city ready to? Do they have the zones in place? Do they have? I mean, you said something about noise ordinance. Is that an issue?
Well,
or is that dealt with through the zoning?
The noise ordinance issue was an argument that was brought up a week ago. However, since then, and I've been in conversation with the city clerk, that the trucks are exempt from the noise ordinance because basically the argument was if somebody leaves the food truck, or if they leave anywhere, but if they left the food truck and made noise, that's a violation of the noise ordinance. Well, that might be, but that's not the truck's fault.
So if somebody's walking home from the bar and making noise, is that?
They were trying to argue that would be on the food. That'd be on the food truck. That was
Well,
the
what if? So is it right now the bars? Then they could fine the bars for allowing kids to leave their establishment and go walk home, and they're making loud noise.
No, and that's the argument that I was
So
making.
what's the difference?
There isn't, but that was the argument they tried to make, and now it's been brought back over. Oh well, they're not being held by the noise ordinance. So what do we do? And it's like, wait a second. So say you have a food truck parked downtown, and a college kid picks up a slice of pizza. another friend goes into Cumberland Farms and picks up a slice of pizza. And they both walk down Water Street and they're both making noise. It's like, you're saying, well, you couldn't hold Cumberland Farms accountable, but you could hold the food truck accountable. It was a ridiculous argument, and as the city clerk confirmed to me this week, now we can't do that. So that argument's right out the window.
Is McDonald's 24/7?
Yes.
Is what's the Cumbies is? Cumbies is probably more sat in a residential, is more located in a residential than the other is.
Well, the argument is the business isn't what makes the noise. The truck isn't what makes the noise. The bar isn't what makes the noise. It's sometimes people leaving that make noise. And once again, if somebody is loud, then you hold that person responsible.
Yeah.
The argument was weak, and it's actually falling on its face right now. And I've had a couple of councilors call me saying, we thinking about reconsidering this.
So I was going to ask the political side. So tell me if I'm wrong. All right, so the vote was 7-6.
Right.
So if a city councilor on the prevailing or winning side
Correct.
says that they would like to move for a motion of reconsideration,
Right.
now that has to be based on new facts, doesn't it?
Nope.
No, new
Nope.
information?
No, it just has to be within 2 weeks.
So it doesn't matter if they have a
doesn't
change
matter.
of heart.
Change of heart.
Okay,
No,
all
that's
right.
all
So
it is,
it's change of heart.
The 2 councilors there were 2 councilors that was missing. That's why it
Yeah.
was 7-6. They are not allowed to vote on this ordinance because they did not vote on the original ordinance.
Well, I would argue that if the vote for reconsideration comes up, doesn't that wipe out what the board initially voted for? So why wouldn't they be able to vote in
It
there?
wipes out the vote.
They can't vote on the reconsideration. That's one vote. I get that. But what about the new vote that now is put in place? Because there's two motions that are going to happen, right? You have to vote for reconsideration.
Right.
And then once that happens, why can't those people then step in?
I guess, basically, and I checked the city clerk on this because I wasn't positive about it. I think it has to do a lot of times, almost similar where if there was a site review and you didn't make it, you can't vote on that particular issue. But even if it got reconsidered and it came back, you can't vote on it because you weren't at that site.
Because I was going to make it interesting, because what if they split it? If you regain it, so now you're 7-6 on the winning side.
Well, basically what happens
it's a tie. It would be 8-7.
Actually, Chris, because the final ordinance that went through, the way that it was adopted was 12-1, based on just how it went through. Because my amendment failed. I know, now we're getting into
The
politics here, the weeds.
Weeds of politics.
The ordinance actually passed 12-1, so technically
The ordinance was to allow this people to go until 11.
11 o'clock. That was the final.
So
adoption
that's
of
the
ordinance.
pro-business. That you allowed the companies.
Yeah, it was semi-pro business.
Yeah, semi.
Semi.
But the problem is that there's some people that say, why can't we just do even late hours? And the argument is they can if they come back in and argue their case. Otherwise,
Right.
they can't.
Exactly.
And you're saying why
make them come back?
If just find the zones, put them where they're supposed to be, and if it's an issue, we address the issue.
Exactly. If there's an
That's what
issue-
I'm hearing you say.
Just like, and you're exactly right. It's almost like I compare it to the outside cafes that we allow in front of bars and restaurants. We allow them, and there's not an issue. But if there is an issue, it'll come back to us, and we'll say, hey, either
Well,
clean up
I
your
mean,
act
it's
or-
twofold with those, because they're also serving alcohol. So there's
Right.
a state statutes that comes into play, and if they go outside of that, they can lose their license overall.
Right. But they could still serve food.
But they could still serve food.
And
But
then-
but at the same time, if that's an issue, then the city can get involved in.
Correct.
And so in here, they're not serving alcohol because it's after hours,
Right.
and you go from there. So
It's just food. So, and once again, this, in my opinion, this shouldn't have been complicated. We shouldn't be talking about it right now. It should have been easy. But as you know, Chris, sometimes in politics, things that should be easy just aren't easy. So it'll be brought back up again in a week, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, it's not one of these earth-shattering, issues that most people are going to be affected by. Actually, hardly anybody's going to be affected by it, with the exception of a couple of the food trucks and some of their patrons. But that was my whole point. It's like sometimes if we're not directly involved in something we don't understand, and having owned a small business, I understand that every little thing makes a difference to these business owners.
right.
And I think sometimes for those elected officials that have never owned a small business, you don't quite get it. And if you own a small business, you get it, because that's why 50% of all restaurants, it's actually higher than that. It's like 75 to 80% of all bars and restaurants and food trucks fail in the first year or two.
Right.
Just gone. So, you don't get a second chance a lot of times. So we need to be as pro-business as we can, especially for these small businesses, and giving them every opportunity to succeed. Because, look at not a food truck, but look at Tilly's. These people have put a lot of money into that restaurant. A lot of money into it. They didn't make it a year. And you don't get the second shot. Your money's gone. So we need to be as pro-business as we can.
And you have to applaud them for stepping up.
Oh, God, yes. Anybody that's owned a small business, and I get it because I put my life savings into mine. You either succeed or you don't. There's no plan B. We're not like small business owners aren't like billionaires that if it goes by the wayside, you write it off and go do another one.
Right.
If it fails, you're done, and you're out banging on doors looking for a 40-hour-a-week job, which is about half as many hours if you own a small business. 40 hours a week when you own a small business
is a vacation.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
No, I did about 80 to 100 hours a week, but you live it. It really is 24/7. Even when you're sleeping, you wake up thinking about it. So that's it on food trucks. Stay tuned. You'll be hearing more about it in the next couple of weeks, and there'll be other things tying into it too, as far as being pro-business and I'll update our viewers here on upcoming businesses, because I know the one that I get talked about the most, and you and I have talked about this, is when's Burger King going to open? It's like, out of all the things that go on in Keene.
Oh, Pizza Hut was supposed to go into Pizza Pie.
Yeah, they've got their permits. I don't know what their holdup is. I'll be checking on that this week. And Burger King has their permits, and I imagine construction will start here shortly, as soon as
it's flame burgers. That's why people are dying for that flame burger. The Whopper.
Whatever.
The Whopper.
But that'll be here before long. But Burger King, they have more money than people with food trucks do. So there's an example.
Will they be 24/7?
Yes. The word that I have is they'll be 24/7. But they're okay unless they have a food truck. Ooh, Burger King food truck. No, don't even go there.
Wow. Well, I still say that it would be great if the city, with their town and gown committee, maybe take a look at having a partnership. If your audience is the college students coming out of the bars, is there a place on campus? Maybe it's the parking lot right next to the security police there. But that people could go and after they walk out to get foods, or maybe it's right on Main Street, right in front of the president's house, or something, or on Appian Way. I have no idea, but
I know.
But could it be that at 7:00 at night they're allowed to go into a place? Maybe it's the parking lot on Winchester, and they're allowed to park there from 7 until 2 or 1:30, and it becomes a known factor, like in Portsmouth where they have the place. I can't think of the place that stays open late, but that they do it because of the people coming out of the bars, and so.
There's a late night crowd.
Well, and in Durham,
it's not you and I anymore.
Back in the day when I was tromping over to UNH for social gatherings, there was food trucks back then that get the late night the gravy, French fries with the gravy, and the stuff that your heart goes, oh my God, it's like
exactly. But
it saves you.
The heart can survive those days. I think I talked about this before when I was in the Navy. I was down in the sub base down in New London, and they allowed certain pizza trucks to come on board, come on to the base, and between midnight and 2 in the morning, they were cranking.
Yeah,
they made a lot of money. So kind of similar here, but you are right. If I had a food truck, I think I'd be approaching the college saying, hey, can I come on to come on to campus and park for a few hours?
As long as in each zone you sign the food truck person signs a contract that states that if the city feels like there is some level of issue, that they can address it, and if it's doesn't resolve, that they can cease the lease.
Exactly. Yep. You're good unless you screw up, and then we take it away. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Let them try, and if they...
Well, but the other side of it is we have to remember that you did have a vote that allowed trucks to expand their time that they currently have, but it just didn't give the answer overall.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's kind of like we tossed a breadcrumb and said, be happy. And I'm like, I think we could have tossed a couple more breadcrumbs. But We'll see. It'll be coming up again this
When
week.
does the zoning portion of it get done?
That's
Because
being
the city has a habit of not moving extremely fast.
it's being moved. I'm on this one. I give the city
Or
manager credit.
I should say it's perceived as the city doesn't have, isn't fast
Yeah,
about
we
certain
have a
things.
tendency
Turning
to.
around.
Yeah, no, we have a tendency to
Beat it
Keene
up
does
to
be a
death.
little slow, but I'll give the city manager credit when I wrote this letter on the food trucks and sent it to her. She was quick to react to it. Obviously I wasn't completely happy with the end result, but the bottom line is it's being talked about and being moved forward. So, I mean, it wasn't a case of, well, we're not doing anything. They listened to what I said. They listened to the food truck owners a little bit. But I think some of the council was a little bit stubborn. But it'll get taken care of. And I'm confident in the end this will prevail. But moving on to other things here, as we're babbling pretty quick. Let's see, what do we got? Trying to see what else we got on here for local stuff. I do want to see kudos, jumping ship a little bit here, to our winter sport teams in Keene. Keene High hockey, Keene High basketball.
But no,
Monadnock hockey.
Yeah, I was going to say, Conant. Again, the basketball.
Conant basketball. They won
the
their
Hoosiers.
division.
The Hoosiers of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Conant basketball, men's and women's team, are always in the hunt. And the men's won the state championship for I think like the 12th time or.
Yeah, they're always up there.
I mean, it's phenomenal. It's just and it's just like. Pratt Gym. If you're a competitor walking into Pratt Gym, it's like walking into the old garden.
Yeah.
There's this rich tradition of a building that you're walking into, and I've gone to 2 games there, and it just gets crazy.
It's rocking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's like, kudos to Keene and Monadnock boys hockey teams. Same way, you come into Keene Ice and it's rocking. You're in the opposing arena. And in both teams now, they're at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Monadnock, lost 1-0 in the finals, and Keene was 1 game short from going to the finals. But Keene is
But they lost to the number 1 seed.
They did. And Keene is a very young team. A lot of freshmen.
I was going to ask you, who do they lose this year? Because especially on defense and in goal, they were younger.
Very young. They lost 6 players overall, but most of their core players. Keene will be number 1, number 2 next year, and they know it. But you got to play the game. You can't just read paper.
Right.
So as much as I don't want to wish summer away, I'm really looking forward to opening day for the.
No, don't do that.
I know, not quite, but it was a lot. It made winter go by a lot faster. We go into Keene Ice once or twice, a week watching a hockey game. And with that said, also one team that doesn't get a lot of recognition at all is the Keene State College men's club hockey team. They're a Division III team, but their club hockey, they're like at a Division II talent, but right now they're club hockey.
That's what, Bobby Roderick?
Yep, Roderick. Yep,
and Bert Poirier.
They've gone to the Nationals this year.
Again?
Yeah. And they're heading off to the Nationals in a few days. Phenomenal hockey team. As much as I like watching, Keene High, you got to watch this. You talk about heavy hitting. I mean, it's phenomenal hockey, and they don't really get any press. I'd like to see that change next year. And for those of you that live in Keene, man, for wintertime when you're freezing and complaining there's nothing to do, you get down to Keene Ice. Between Keene High, Monadnock High, and Keene State College, there's some great hockey games going on down there. So kudos to all of them. Kudos to Keene High basketball, who made it to the playoffs for the first time in years.
Yep.
Didn't make it through the first round, but made it to the dance.
They tasted it, and hopefully this is a building block to move forward on. Again, I don't know what their class was. I don't know if it was senior heavy. I don't know if it was young kids that will come back next year and understand what it takes to take the next step with a growing system, feeding system that may stabilize that. All I care about anytime in any sport is that they're competitive.
Yep.
That's all I care, because if you're competitive, you have a chance to win. So it's really exciting. The kids want to compete at the highest level, and they want to win. I get it, and so it's exciting to see that these kids are doing what they're doing.
Now, somebody as yourself that's been on school board and is back on school board, one thing that really helps too is facilities. I mean, before Keene Ice was built,
we had the barn,
and they were at the barn. there just wasn't a lot of interest in playing hockey. The kids that were good hockey players, just some of them played, a lot of them didn't. Some of them went off to prep schools, and now what you're seeing, the ones that played for prep schools are coming back to play for Keene High. They've had that 2 years in a row where a top player left a prep school to come back to Keene.
Yeah.
And
or they go to play juniors or whatever.
Yeah, somewhere else. And now they're coming back to actually play for the school because A, great facility, and B, a great team. And they're getting the ice time. A lot of these players, they'll go to a prep team, they might be buried down the depth charts.
Yeah.
So they're coming back. So facilities help. And I know it seems like yesterday, but it's probably a decade ago now when we were looking at Alumni Field trying to get turf out there so it extend the playing life of the field that gets beat up every year.
Yeah.
And I see other schools. I thought about you the other day, Chris, because I was reading about a couple of high schools in New Hampshire that have finally decided to go to a turf field because it's costing too much to repair the grass fields. That they finally figured out it's less in the long run to put in these new turf fields. But I know you fought that fight for years, and
It is what it is. I think it makes all the sense in the world, but we've over the years did a patchwork to get the field where it is today. It's in good condition. The stands are in good condition. The stands for the visiting team are 100% better than what they were.
Right.
So we've done some things to maintain all the fields, but I still say that especially changing the start times in school, it would benefit if you had a turf field like that, because then kids that are playing sports could be playing. If you go to Brattleboro, they have a field hockey game that can start at 6 o'clock because they have lights. They have two sets of lights. They have the lights on the football field, and then they have separate lights for the field where other sports play, soccer and others. So you can have those events going on, and you can have something at 4 o'clock, 6:30, and even 8 o'clock if you chose to.
and not get the field all ripped up.
And that's the other thing is, the city, you have the Pop Warner system that used to be part of the city's program. Now it's a separate thing, and they raise a lot of money, but they still only have one football field to play on.
Right.
And they tear up they have more of a tendency to play in the middle of the field. And so it's back and forth wear and tear. And if you're doing 5 games in one day, even 3 games in one day, and you're staying right here, you're going to chew up that field. No matter what you do to make that field a quality field, you're going to run into those problems.
We do need a really good second field. That's an interesting topic. I know on City Council this year, part of our capital improvements budget is putting some money into Pat Russell Field, otherwise known as Carpenter Field, that we're going to try to do some renovations down there and get it up to snuff, because it's a nice area. It's a pretty rough field right now.
Now, if you're going to do it, you'd have to do it at Wheelock because it has the parking, and you'd or out at Keene and see if you could work a partnership with Keene to put something in, and because you don't need parking, you need a facility where people can store pads and things like that,
No question.
and then stands and bathrooms. So it's a huge project, and so when you look at that, instead of putting that chunk of money towards that, could you just put it towards something that would allow everybody to play on? But it's
There's plenty of places to spend money, but only so much money to spend.
That's right. So
it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
But nice to see the Pat Russell Field, because the rugby team plays there. A lot of youth sports team plays there.
What is that? The Monadnock Wolfpack?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. My son played on that for a couple of years. And, I kind of said, don't need a lawyer in the family with a crushed up legs. That's a tough sport, man. Rugby.
Oh yeah.
And they do it, for the heck of it.
Right.
They
do it for
and
the love
guys
of the game.
All ages. I mean, late teens, 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yep.
I mean, that's a crazy sport. So anyhow, you are right with Wheelock Park. We're looking to, we just got new restrooms out there, which was way, way, way overdue.
Yeah.
And we have the skateboard park downtown that, we're looking at. They're raising a lot of money on their own, doing a good job. The amazing part about the skateboard park is the other night when we talk about capital improvements budget, you would think people would show up and be complaining about where we're spending money. But every time we have the capital improvements budget come up, people show up saying we're not spending enough money on a particular project. And there was probably 6, 8 people that spoke on behalf of the skate park that we need to invest more into it. So, interesting arguments. And the funny part was, yeah, you got your young people that always come forward to skateboard. Man, there was some adults that came in and said they really enjoy skateboarding, which is like, yeah, it's not me. I have a fractured skull by now, but.
Well, I just think that it would be nice. I know that they're in the process of raising funds.
Trying.
But if what they're talking about for Gilboa Ave is a reality, then I think that including in that budget the upgrade of the skate park, whether that includes the funds they've raised or not, just plan on putting an upgrade, because I think that's just another attraction for people to be downtown.
Yep. No, it'll be a definite upgrade. Then what ties into that is restrooms. It's like, okay, if we're gonna, put a better facility there for skateboarding,
Yeah.
you get a bunch of people hanging out. Where do they go to the bathroom? It's a legitimate argument.
Right.
And originally, the argument was, well, we'll go back into the transportation center because the city still owns it. The argument against it was the gentleman that owns Odelay Restaurant had a business in there. Well, as we both know, he's moving to a different location. So that becomes available again. So that'll be an argument. I'm sure
That's
the
why you
council's gonna
pulled.
be
That's why
talking-
you pulled it off the table.
Exactly.
The 120,000. I think it was 120,000.
So,
Yeah. all
there's
right.
the argument of, and I know, PM Slack, who represents Senator Shaheen, her office is in there, and so I'm sure she.
Well,
would
the,
like
the
to see
problem
that.
is that I think there has to be a commitment to having it be a welcome type center, or a transportation hub, or something, because you're going to have to staff it.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't staff it, then that's when you get into
Yep.
trouble, and that was why they went away in the first place.
Yep.
So there's got to be a level of commitment to do that, but maybe there's a partnership there that you could do with the chamber or whatever it may be, but just you have to first make the decision on what it is that you want,
Yeah.
and make sure it's not, if we're going to do it all in, or don't do it at all.
It has to be staffed, and whether it's 24/7 or whether the bathrooms just say, for example, they're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever, it has to be staffed. The days of leaving, you go to any community that doesn't staff a bathroom, it's bad news.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be staffed, and I mean there is a group that's approached the city asking us to do it. So I mean it's going to be a joint public-private corporation, but. Another story, and Gilboa Ave, as you've mentioned in the past, that there's some pretty interesting proposals on the table for Gilboa Ave that, if they come to fruition or not, we'll see.
Right.
Obviously, there's only so many tax dollars to go, so how much public-private money goes into it? Another question. So that's coming up also on City Council, as you've probably read in the paper recently.
Okay, before you go there,
Okay.
I want to know, and you may not have the complete answer today, but I
Yes.
do want to know what it is that you are planning to do in reference to the Senior Citizen Center. You had a plan that had an expansion included in with the Senior Citizen Center. I think it was about $9 million, which
At the
I
rec
think
center.
took everybody's breath away for a second,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I thought you were going to come in probably a quarter of that, and it came up much higher. I don't know if that's because that you included the expansion in it. I don't know if it was whatever it was, but that's where it came in at. But I hope that as much as you talk about the homeless and addressing the homeless, I hope that we address, I live across the street from the rec center. I see the activities that are going up there. Andy Bohannon, from Bobby Wilbur on to, Andy Bohannon has just taken it to another level from what Bobby had it, and it's active all the time. I would argue that it's probably more active for a younger generation, and that, I guess my point is, as you move forward, we have a swing of or a growth of retiring individuals that is, and they're going to be looking for a level of activities. Are you truly meeting your mission when it comes to the those that are our elder citizens in meeting their needs at the same time as you are the younger generation. I think as much as I talked about having a conversation with the city manager about that topic with homeless. I think this is another one because I hope it doesn't get lost, and I hope you guys revisit the Senior Citizen Center. They have over 500 members, and so I think I would hate to see it go away because it's an alternative for people to maintain a healthy social life, which means a healthy life, and there's so much more to it. I'm just hitting on one topic. So I think it's another thing to talk about at some point. I don't want because it shocked everybody that just goes by. It's not a reality that's going to happen. I hope it still is a part of a conversation.
It's still on the table. Obviously, the $9 million was like, okay, that's not going to work. But it's funny because as somebody myself grew up in that neighborhood and had been going to the rec center since I was like 6 years old, and now that I'm, what am I, 26, 36, something like that now.
Yeah, older than me.
Yeah, just a tad. I'm at the other end of the spectrum of using, like you just said. I'm certainly closer to using it as a senior than as youth. It's on the table. I mean, obviously it's not smoldering hot right now because we've had to back off the $9 million. That's not going to work. But yes, it's something we're taking seriously. We just have to go to Plan B, and we don't quite have Plan B yet. But it's not like we've tucked it away and we've forgotten about it. We just have to take a look at it again and say, okay, do we even need an expansion? Can we do this without expansion? Do we do a combination of maybe we do some programs at the rec center and maybe we go in coordination with the YMCA. Maybe they can provide something, and we provide transportation out there, because they have facilities out there. So, do we do a public-private partnership on that?
Yeah, and how transparent of the conversation do you allow the community to be part of? And I don't mean that as it's not happening now. I mean, is that something that the community as a whole will have the opportunity to participate in the conversation?
It'll be very transparent. But like I said, the $9 million caught us all off guard.
Yeah.
And I think many, including myself, thought it was going to be a lot less expensive and we'd be moving forward with it. And when that price tag came out, it caught us by surprise. It's like,
right.
we can't do that. You can't justify $9 million to the taxpayers.
Right.
We've got to go to Plan B. We didn't really have a Plan B set up. But I think Plan B is going to be that in the end. It'll be a joint private-public partnership, and how do we make it work? And, a lot of the senior members aren't from Keene. They come in from small towns. So we've got to look at all of that. How many are Keene residents? How many aren't Keene residents? How many would use the rec center? How many would go to the Y? So, no, we're working on that because, quite honestly, Chris, you and I are probably going to be members. So, we got to get ourselves taken care of here.
Because we're getting close to the bottom of the hour.
Another minute or so to go. Jeez.
Just wanted to wish Lee Perkins, former executive director of Cheshire TV, healthy recovery.
Had a heart attack.
The
good news is,
it's very public because
we found out you have a heart, and I told him that on Facebook. That's the good news.
Yeah, I think I wrote to him. He said he was talking about the helicopter ride, and I'm like, wow, you had a helicopter ride? How cool! I've always wanted to go on that.
Not that,
but not that. But it's fun reading his. Well, I should say Tracy's stories.
Social media.
In her blog that she has, and but we wish him the best and a speedy recovery.
Absolutely.
But he's doing well.
And we know he watches too.
He's doing well. He's telling us all how he's eating now compared to what he was eating before.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
You better stay there. Only about a half minute left. I got to say kudos to my ski racing niece, Anna Dumont, who finished 16th out of 105 under the under 12 skiers in New Hampshire. She's one of the top skiers in the state. She obviously did learn from me because if you ever saw me ski, that was very bad news back in the day.
Okay.
But she's doing well, and her whole goal is to make it to the Olympics. And she's an 11-year-old and just driven. She, no doubt in my mind that she'll make it to the Olympics at some point. But, like I said, I like to take credit, but the only credit that I get was she never learned from me, and that's a good thing.
Is that Holly's brother?
Yep, Holly's brother is.
Have a good week.
We're out of here.
We'll
see you in a couple of weeks, everybody. Thank you.